Hello and welcome back to another FPL team selection video. We do have a lot of stuff to talk about today, so I'm not going to keep you for too long with our team selection, but we are going to go over last week's team from game week 27, and we're going to take a look at this week's team for game week 28, but then of course it is blank game week 29 next week, which a lot of us have a lot of planning to do, and of course with the FA Cup now past, we have a little bit of an idea of what's going to happen when it comes to game week 32's doubles, game week 33's doubles, and of course the blanks and stuff in game week 34. So I want to talk a little bit about that, and that's what the majority of this video is going to be. But starting things off, of course, it is still a team selection video, so I wanted to take a look at last week's squad. We have finally made it back into the top 1 million, which I think is actually the first time since like game week 5. It has been a horrible run so far this season, but we're up to 928,000th in the world, hoping to continue to get those green arrows and work quite well. Thankfully it was a green arrow, a nice green arrow with that Palmer captaincy, which didn't really go too well at all with only the 6-pointer, but we were okay because Salah didn't really do anything either. He only picked up a 6-pointer as well. The rest of the team done pretty decent. Bruno Fernandes has started to come good. I think he got 10 points last week and he got 10 points in game week 27 as well, which was really nice. Bowen with a 6-pointer. Felt as though he got a little bit robbed with that goal because I thought it was a shot on target, which went down as an own goal, but 6 is still pretty decent. Kluivert came in as an auto sub for Alexander Isak, who of course wasn't in the squad. Wisa done really nicely as well, and of course the defence for a change actually got some decent points, even though Gabriel and Trent ended up getting a bonus point taken off them towards the end. But really nice points, 67. I think the average was 53 last week, so we got 15 above the average, 14 above the average, 14 points above the average, which was pretty nice. And of course we now are back into that top 1 million. As far as the best fixtures go for this week, it is a lot of teams who are blanking in 29 with a good fixture this week. So when it comes to making transfers, it doesn't really feel as though it is going to be the best move. Obviously Palace, Liverpool and Newcastle were all in here with the best fixtures this week. Palace with Ipswich, Liverpool with Southampton and Newcastle with West Ham. Obviously all don't have a fixture next week, so for me it doesn't make sense as someone who isn't going to be using the free hit in game week 29 to bring in any of those players. So really I'm just looking at Chelsea, looking at Everton and looking at Wolves. Now speaking on Chelsea, of course last week I was very close to bringing in Cucurella, and then I called the fact that he would end up getting a 15-pointer, and then he ended up getting exactly that, a 15-pointer. So I really need Trent to do something this week, because that was the whole point in me not going for Cucurella, so I could have Trent against Southampton at home, and of course Chelsea in game week 29 play against Arsenal away from home. So hopefully in the long run that seems worth it. Trent is about 9 points behind Cucurella as it stands, so I need a big haul from him this week. As far as other Chelsea players go, I'm not really too interested, because of course after this week they do have Arsenal away and then Spurs at home before I likely hit the wild card in game week 31. Same kind of goes for Everton. Obviously own Jordan Pickford right now. There's no really other options that I'm really too interested in. Beto could be a decent striker, but again, when it comes to game week 30, he's coming up against Liverpool away, and I feel like my striker options are still pretty decent at the minute. Then of course with Wolves, would have been a really nice week to bring in someone like Cunha, but of course he's now suspended for that entirety of the good fixture run, which leaves no real good options. Potentially Ait-Nouri as a defender, but for me I think I'll wait and see with him, maybe bring him in next week, but for this week I'm going to be sticking. So that brings me to the team for this week, and of course we will be then rolling the transfer due to the fact that there's nothing really going on for my team this week that makes too much sense in the long run. So that's going to be rolling another transfer, which is going to take me to 3 next week for the blank game week in game week 29, which gives me plenty of opportunity to make any moves that I want to, which we will look in just a little second. But for this week, of course, a pretty decent team as well. Forward line is more than capable of doing something nice. nice. Isak looks as though he's going to be fit. Howe said in a press conference today that he's trained every day of this week, so he should be perfectly fine for West Ham away from home. Wissa has done really well in recent game weeks, so hopefully he can do the same again against Aston Villa. Benching Raul Jimenez again this week. I put a post on Twitter basically ranting about how annoyed I've been with him since I owned him in game week 29. I think I've benched him for 6 matches and he's equalled the amount of points that I've started him in, which I think is 13 matches since I brought him in. So if you do own Raul Jimenez, this is probably the week that you want to be starting him, because I think he's only blanked once since I've benched him in the 6 games that I have benched him in. So Jimenez is guaranteed to get a goal this week, in case you were on a 50-50 with him. Midfield's looking really nice. Southampton at home for Salah. He is going to be the captain. Palmer with Leicester at home. A home game for Fernandes. Not ideal against Arsenal, but he's still more than capable of doing anything. Of course, has the penalties too. Bowen, another home fixture against Newcastle. We've got Kluivert, we've got Kerkez against Spurs at home. I think the defence is another week where it probably won't do too great. Hopefully Trent can carry the points there. But yeah, looking really nice for this week. More than happy with the squad going into game week 28. So this is where we're at when it comes to planning for this week. Now I've jumped over to FPL Team because obviously probably the best planning app that you can get when it comes to FPL. Now this is how the team's of course looking for game week 28 with 67.5 expected points, 2 transfers in the bank to use. Now when it comes to game week 29, obviously that's going to be the week of a lot of free hits getting used and a lot of people using transfers. So I'm going to have 3 saved up. At the minute, it looks as though I'm going to be using 2. You can see them in the top right-hand corner. Trent Alexander-Arnold coming out for Kusanov from Man City. And then Jimenez is going to come out for Chris Wood. Now, that gives me a perfectly good team for that. Of course, Alex Moreno doesn't play, so that's, nothing really I can do there. And then we'll bench Salah, bench Isak, so that I can keep them and keep the value that obviously is held in those 2 players. Now, with Kusanov, I would really like to have gotten in Vardiol, but he is just a little bit out of my price range, and unfortunately I'm not able to get him. So I'm not absolutely locked in these transfers, just in case you were wondering. I think Wood is definitely going to come in for Jimenez, but yeah, so Kusanov might not come in, but he's the option that I've got at the minute. The other one I was thinking was potentially going to Dean Hodgson from Bournemouth and doubling up on the Bournemouth defence against Brentford, but it feels kind of counteractive having Wissa up front. But still a more than capable team. Again, still got 11 players. Of course, I could bring out Castagne as well, but he's still doing decent for expected points. He's got 3.2 expected points in that match. When you're looking at the likes of, Hodgson, who's got a better fixture, he's only got 3.3. So for the sake of an extra transfer, I'm thinking I might just play Castagne in that match. And then see how it goes from there. So if we bring Kusanov back on, we can see how the team is lining up for game week 30, which is going to be the final week before I use the wild card, and it's a really, really solid team there as well. Again, the defence is mainly why I'm making that transfer. Castagne is obviously on the bench there playing against Arsenal, so I don't want to have to start him. And I can bring in it would be either Hodgson or a Man City defender with Ipswich at home and Leicester at home. One of them makes the most sense for me to bring in that transfer. And of course, Chris Wood playing against Man United at home, he's more than capable of scoring in that one. So that's going to leave me again with 2 free transfers heading into game week 31, where I will be using the wild card. Obviously I've not got a team set up for that. And then we go into game week 32 with 3 free transfers. So that feels like it is going to be a good move, especially with how unsure everyone is about what's going to happen with those games. Again, I don't think we find out until game week 31 when who is going to be blanking in game week 34, who's going to be doubling in game week 33 for sure. But there is obviously another chip strategy that has been going about, and it is using the free hit in game week 33 rather than the bench boost, and then using the bench boost in game week 32. So of course that would mean wildcarding in 31 and bringing in the double doublers, which is going to be Newcastle and Palace for game week 32, and then using the free hit for game week 33. I got this from FPL Mate's recent chip strategy video, which is a very, very good video if you want to go and have a look at that one. But basically, in game week 33, which is going to have most of the doublers, a lot of those teams is going to be the likes of Crystal Palace, Brighton, Bournemouth, teams that you probably don't want to load your team up with because you're going to be missing out on a lot of the premiums, your Arsenals, Liverpool's, Man City's, Chelsea's, etc. So the free hit looks quite good, and then of course we could make a bench boost team for game week 32 using the wild card in 31, and then just navigating with transfers for blank game week 34. Now I understand that is probably a little bit confusing, so I've kind of made a graphic here of what you can potentially be looking at. So if the bench boost is going to get used in game week 32, where Newcastle and Palace are going to be the teams doubling, you're obviously going to want to have a good 15 players for game week 32. Now looking at the fixtures, these are some of the best fixtures for game week 31 and 32. Obviously Arsenal, Brentford at home, Brighton, Leicester at home in 32, Spurs, Wolves at home, Wolves away, Nottingham Forest have Everton at home as well, and all these teams are teams that look like they'll be blanking in game week 34. So if you're going to be using a free hit in game week 33, it means you're going to have your team back for game week 34, and you're going to want to have as much transfers as possible in the bank to potentially get rid of all these players and have a good 11 for game week 34, a playable 11 for game week 34. At the minute right now it feels as though everyone's just kind of going week by week, just trying to prepare for game weeks that we don't actually know what's going to happen yet. So for me, I feel like it's just going to be the best move to save transfers as much as possible for whatever happens. I think in any situation, if you can have 3 or 4 transfers, even if worst case scenario happens for your team, you can still do quite well with 3 or 4 transfers in the bank. So I do apologise if that was quite confusing, but again, right now it is very much a waiting game to see what happens with the blanks and doubles in 5-6 weeks time. So right now, the best case scenario for me, I feel like, is just rolling as many transfers as possible over the next week or two, having a good enough 11 for game week 29, which for me of course involves having Castagne against Spurs, which isn't ideal, but I think the transfer is going to be much more useful later on down the line. So hopefully that made enough sense. Again, we'll be able to speak about it much more confidently in about 3 weeks time when we know what's actually happening. But for now, that's the team rolling the transfer for this week. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments section. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you did enjoy. Subscribe if you are new for more FPL stuff, and I'll see you all in the next one.